The grand chamber of Velthera Prime was silent. This never happened. 15 different species, each with their own agenda, their own goals, their own hatred, for at least 3 other species in the room. But today they all agreed on one thing. Ambassador Velnix stood at the center platform. His 3 eyes scanned the room slowly. The Takar Collective had seen many things in their long history. They had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. They had seen species burn themselves out in nuclear fire. They had watched civilizations reach for the stars and collapse under their own weight. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared them for humanity. "We are here," Velnix began, his voice translator rendering his words in every language present, "to vote on Resolution 3445. The complete isolation of species designated as humanity and their home system, Sol." The holographic display activated. Grainy footage began to play. It showed a planet, blue and green, covered in water and life. Earth. Then the footage changed. It showed massive ships in orbit. Krell ships. The Krell Dominion had been the greatest military power in the known galaxy for 6,000 years. Their technology was advanced. Their warriors were brutal. Their empire stretched across 400 systems. The footage continued. It showed humans being loaded onto transport ships. Men, women, children, all of them prisoners, all of them slaves. The Krell had invaded Earth 34 years ago. The humans had fought back with primitive weapons. Nuclear bombs, kinetic missiles, chemical rockets. The Krell had laughed. It took them 6 weeks to conquer the entire planet. Velnix paused the footage. For 17 years, the Krell used humanity as slaves. Mining operations, construction projects, agricultural work. The humans were perfect for it. They were strong enough to work hard, smart enough to follow orders, and they died slowly enough that the Krell didn't need to replace them too often. Ambassador Taiyang of the Paharan Coalition spoke up. "We all know this history. Why are we watching it again?" Velnix's 3 eyes focused on Taiyang. "Because you need to remember what happened next." The footage started again. It showed a mining facility on one of Jupiter's moons. Human workers moved equipment. Krell overseers watched with weapons ready. Then in a single moment, everything changed. Every human moved at once. They had weapons. Not Krell weapons. Human-made weapons built from stolen parts and salvaged materials. The Krell overseers died in seconds. This happened simultaneously, Velnix explained, across 17 different facilities in the Sol system. The humans had been planning this for months. They had learned to communicate right under the Krell's sensors. They had learned to hide their activities. They had learned to build weapons that the Krell scanners couldn't detect. The footage jumped forward. It showed Krell warships burning in space. Human ships, crude and ugly compared to Krell designs, swarmed around them. The human ships were smaller, faster, and they didn't fight with honor or tactics. They fought like animals, like predators. The rebellion took 8 months, Velnix continued. 8 months for humanity to completely destroy the Krell Dominion. Not just drive them out of Sol, destroy them entirely. The chamber filled with murmurs. Everyone knew the story, but hearing it again still sent chills through every species present. Velnix changed the footage. It showed a Krell colony world. Population 4 billion. The footage was from a surveillance satellite. Human ships appeared in orbit. They didn't send demands. They didn't ask for surrender. They simply opened fire. The planet burned. Every city, every town, every single settlement was targeted. When the humans left, the colony was dead. This happened at every Krell world, Velnix said quietly. Every colony, every outpost, every mining station, every research facility. The humans hunted down the Krell with a dedication that frightened every species that witnessed it. They didn't stop until the Krell were extinct as a civilization. The footage showed more. Krell ships trying to flee, human ships pursuing them across star systems, Krell survivors begging for mercy in a dozen languages. The humans never responded. They simply killed. The final count, Velnix said, was 47 billion Krell dead. Less than 100,000 survivors remain, scattered across the galaxy, hiding in places even we don't know about. The Krell Dominion, 6,000 years of history, erased in less than 3 years total. Ambassador Yuna appeared on a secondary holographic display. She was the only human allowed in council space, and even then, only as a hologram. She never left Sol system. None of the humans did anymore. Yuna was old, her hair gray, her face marked with scars from the Krell occupation. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations except one patch, Earth Defense Force. "You want to vote on whether to leave us alone?" Yuna said. Her voice was tired but firm. "Let me make this simple for you. We didn't want any of this. We were happy on our planet, exploring our own system, planning our own future. The Krell came to us. They attacked us. They enslaved us. They killed billions of our people." She paused, her eyes hard. "We learned from them. We learned how to build your ships, how to use your weapons, how to navigate your star lanes. But most importantly, we learned that the galaxy doesn't respect peace. It respects strength. So we became strong." Yuna's image moved closer as if she was standing right in front of them. "You're afraid of us now. Good, you should be. Because we will never be slaves again. We will never let anyone attack our world again, and if you try, we will do to you what we did to the Krell. We will erase you." The chamber was completely silent. "So yes," Yuna continued, "we accept your pact. Mark our system as forbidden. Delete your navigation data. Tell your children scary stories about the humans. We don't care. We didn't want to be part of your galaxy anyway. You came to us." "Remember that," Velnix cleared his throat. "The vote is called. All in favor of Resolution 3445, complete isolation of humanity and the Sol system. Mark your decision now." 15 lights appeared on the main display. All green. 15-0. Unanimous. "The resolution passes," Velnix announced. "As of this moment, Sol system is classified as forbidden space. All records of humanity are to be sealed. Jump coordinates are to be deleted. Any species attempting contact with humanity will be expelled from the Council and considered a threat to galactic peace." Yuna's hologram nodded once. "Good. Now leave us alone." Her image disappeared. The Council members began to file out of the chamber. Velnix watched them go. He was old even for a Takar. He had seen empires rise and fall. But humanity was different. They weren't conquerors. They didn't want territory or resources or power. They just wanted to be left alone. And that, Velnix thought as he dimmed the lights in the empty chamber, was what made them truly terrifying. Species that wanted nothing from you, but could take everything if you threatened them. The Pact was established. Humanity was isolated, and the galaxy moved on, hoping they would never have to think about humans again. They were wrong. 53 years passed. The galaxy changed. New species joined the Council. Old species retired to their homeworlds. Trade routes shifted. Empires rose and fell. And slowly, very slowly, the memory of humanity began to fade, not for everyone. Ambassador Velnix was long dead, but his people remembered. The Takar kept detailed records. So did the Piharan Coalition, where Councillor Taiyang's great-grandson now held his seat. But for the newer species, the ones who joined the Council in the decades after the Pact, humanity was just a strange rule. A forbidden zone with no explanation. The Drekinus Hive joined the Council in its 47th year. They were warriors. Their entire civilization was built on conquest and expansion. They had crushed 8 other species on their way to space. They had taken 3 systems by force before the Council even made contact. The Council had 2 choices: let them in or fight them. They chose the easier path. Queen Veshkara ruled the Draconis from the throne world of Drek. She was massive, even for her species. Her carapace was scarred from 100 battles. Her forearms each carried marks of honor. She had killed her own mother to take the throne, as was tradition. And she was hungry for more territory. Her son, Prince Kethvan, was just like her. Young, ambitious, and completely sure of his own superiority. He stood in the council chamber for the first time and barely hid his disgust. All these species talking and debating and voting. The Dracanis way was simpler. Take what you want. Kill anyone who stops you. The council session was boring. Trade disputes. Border negotiations. Mining rights. Kethvan wasn't paying attention until Councillor Taiyang mentioned something strange. We need to update the navigation protocols, Taiyang said. There have been 3 accidental approaches to the Forbidden Zone in the past decade. We need better warnings in the jump calculators. Kethvan's translator made a chirping sound. Forbidden Zone? What Forbidden Zone? The chamber went quiet. Taiyang looked uncomfortable. The Sol exclusion area. It's in the treaty documents you signed when joining the council. We signed many documents, Kethvan replied. My people don't bother with every small rule. Explain this forbidden zone. Taeyang exchanged glances with several other ambassadors. Finally, he spoke. There is a region of space approximately 50 light-years in radius, centered on a star called Sol. No council species is permitted to enter this space. No contact is allowed. It has been this way for 53 years. Kethvan laughed. It was a harsh clicking sound. One species controls 50 light-years? And you all just accept this? Are they so powerful? Yes, Taeyang said simply. Then why haven't I heard of them? Where are their ships? Their fleets? Their empire? They don't have an empire, another ambassador said. They stay in their own system. They don't leave. Kethvan laughed again. So you're afraid of a species that stays home? What kind of warriors are you? Taeyang stood up. His old body was still strong, his voice still firm. Prince Kethvan, I urge you to read the sealed records. Understand why the Pact exists. This is not a joke. This is not a game. Humanity is dangerous in ways your species cannot imagine. Then let me imagine, Kethvan said. Tell me what makes them so scary. Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, they erased the Krell Dominion completely, in less than 3 years. 47 billion dead, an empire that stood for 6,000 years gone. Kethvan waved a hand dismissively. The Krell, I've heard of them. Ancient history. Probably weak. Probably ready to fall anyway. The Krell conquered 43 species, Taeyang said, his voice rising. They had weapons that could crack planets, ships that could destroy moons, and humanity destroyed them like they were nothing. Kethvan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I want to see these records. They're sealed, Taeyang replied. You need unanimous council approval. Then I request it. Let's vote. The vote was 12 against, 5 abstaining. The Draconis request was denied. Prince Kethvan returned to his ship angry. He didn't understand these old species. They were afraid of ghosts. A species that hadn't left its own system in 50 years was no threat to anyone. The Forbidden Zone was just wasted space. But Kethvan was curious now. He had his intelligence officers search for information. They couldn't access the sealed records, but they found other things. Fragments, deleted files that weren't fully deleted, corrupted data from old databases, black market information from data brokers. What they found was confusing. References to primitive mammals, notes about limited technology, reports about chemical propulsion and projectile weapons. This was what everyone was afraid of. Species using old technology. Kethvan brought his findings to Queen Veshkara. She studied the data with all 4 hands, her compound eyes processing the information quickly. This makes no sense, she said. The council fears a species with primitive technology? That's what the fragments say, Kethvan replied. I think the old species are keeping this zone for themselves. There must be resources there. Something valuable. Veshkara clicked her mandibles together, a sign of deep thought. The zone is on the direct route to the outer bands. Going around it adds 2 months to any expansion in that direction. Exactly, Kethvan said. They're blocking us for their own benefit. What do you propose? A survey mission. 300 ships. We don't attack. We just fly through and scan. If these humans object, we'll see what they actually have. If they don't, we establish that the zone is not really forbidden. Veshkara considered this. She had fought her whole life. She had never backed down from a challenge, and she refused to let old weak species dictate where her people could go. Do it, she said, but be ready for resistance. Even primitives can be dangerous if they're desperate. Kethvan assembled his fleet. 300 ships, all armed, all crewed by veteran warriors. He announced his intention to the council in a formal message. The reaction was immediate. Councillor Taeyang sent an urgent message. Please, Prince Kethvan, do not do this. You will regret it. The Takar Collective recalled all their ships from Draconis space. The Baharan Coalition severed diplomatic ties. 6 other species issued formal protests. Queen Veshkara saw this as proof she was right. They were afraid the Draconis would discover their secret. Whatever was in that zone, it was valuable enough to cause this much panic. Proceed with the mission, she ordered. Prince Kethvan smiled. His fleet was strong. His warriors were ready, and he was about to prove that the Draconis bowed to no one. The fleet jumped to the edge of the Forbidden Zone. The coordinates were easy to calculate, even though they'd been deleted from official databases. Kethvan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Veshkala, and looked at the star charts. One yellow star. 9 planets. Nothing special. Nothing threatening. Take us in, he ordered. Slow approach. Weapons ready but not armed. This is a survey mission. The fleet moved forward. 300 ships sliding through space toward Sol. On Earth, alarms started ringing. Admiral Junho looked at his screens and felt something cold settle in his stomach. After 53 years of peace, someone had finally broken the Pact. He opened a channel to Captain Hana at Neptune Station. We have contacts. 300 ships. Draconis signatures. Hana looked at her own screens. She had trained for this her whole life. Her great-grandmother Minji had fought the Krell. Her grandmother had helped build the defense network. Her mother had commanded the Mars station. And now it was her turn. 3 warnings, she said quietly. Then we show them why the Pact exists. Confirmed, Junho replied. Protocols are standing by. Captain, you have operational control. Hana took a deep breath. Then she activated the first warning beacon. In space, the Draconis fleet received a message in 4,000 languages. You are entering human-controlled space. This is your first warning. Leave immediately. Prince Kethavan stared at the message displaying on his screen. 4,000 languages, all saying the same thing. Leave immediately. He felt his mandibles click in amusement. They were trying to scare him with words. Communications officer, he said. Reply to the message. Tell them we are here for peaceful survey only. The officer hesitated. Sir, the message says this is their first warning. That implies there will be more. I don't care about their warnings, Kethvan snapped. Send the message, the reply was transmitted. The Draconis fleet continued forward, moving deeper into the solar system. They passed the heliopause, the edge where the sun's influence met interstellar space. Their sensors were active, scanning everything. Sir, the science officer called out. I'm picking up strange readings. There are thousands of objects throughout the system. Most of them look like asteroids, but the composition is wrong. Wrong how? Too much metal. Too uniform. It's like someone moved them into position. Kethvan frowned. Before he could respond, another message arrived. This one was different, stronger, more direct. This is your second warning. Turn back now. You have been warned what humanity is capable of. Kethvan pulled up the fragmented data his intelligence team had gathered. Chemical rockets. Primitive weapons. Limited technology. These warnings didn't match the data. Unless the data was wrong. Science officer, what else are you seeing? Sir, there are massive structures around the outer planets. Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. They're huge. Our sensors can't fully penetrate them, but the energy readings are significant. Defense stations? Possibly. But the design is unlike anything in our database. Kethvan felt something unfamiliar. Was it doubt? No, he was Draconis. He had conquered 12 worlds personally. He would not be intimidated by structures and asteroids. Continue forward, but raise shields. Charge weapons to stand by. The fleet moved deeper. They were approaching Neptune now. The planet was blue and cold, with massive storms visible on its surface. And orbiting it was something that made every Draconis warrior on every ship stop and stare. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a rock. It was massive, 5 kilometers long. Its surface was dark, covered in what looked like armor plating. No windows, no decorations, just smooth dark metal and weapon ports. Hundreds of weapon ports. That's their flagship, the tactical officer whispered. It has to be. Kethvan couldn't disagree. The ship sat in Neptune's orbit like a predator waiting. Around it, smaller ships moved in perfect formation. Not hundreds, not thousands. Just 100 ships, each one small compared to the flagship, but each one radiating power. Get me a scan on that flagship, Kethvan ordered. Sir, we can't. There's some kind of interference. Our sensors slide right off it. A third message arrived. This one was different again. It was a live transmission. A human face appeared on Kethvan's screen. She was small compared to a Draconis. Humans usually were, but there was something in her eyes that made Kethvan pause. She wore a uniform, dark blue with silver insignia. Her hair was tied back. Her face was calm. My name is Captain Hana, she said. Her voice was steady, controlled. I am the great-granddaughter of Commander Minji, who liberated the Titan slave colonies from the Krell. I'm giving you this final warning as she would have wanted. She paused, her eyes locked on the camera. On Kethvan. Leave now, or you will understand why the galaxy fears us. Kethvan felt anger rise in him. This small creature dared to threaten the Draconis hive? He had crushed species stronger than this. He had burned worlds that defied him. Human, he said, his translator making his words harsh. I am Prince Kethvan of the Draconis hive. We do not take orders from lesser species. You will stand down and allow us passage, or we will take it by force. Hana's expression didn't change. She just looked at him with those calm, cold eyes. I see, she said quietly. You've made your choice. The transmission ended. Kethvan turned to his crew. All ships battle formation. Prepare to engage. Show these primitives what real power looks like. On the indomitable, Captain Hana closed her eyes for a brief moment. She thought of her great-grandmother's journals. Minji had written about the Krell, about the occupation, about the day she had watched her entire city burn from orbit. She had written about the rage, the grief, the absolute determination to never let it happen again. Hana opened her eyes and looked at her crew. They were ready. They had trained for this. The entire human species had trained for this. For 53 years they had built and planned and prepared, hoping they would never need it. Knowing they probably would. Communications open fleet channel, she said. Channel open, Captain. Hana took a breath. Then she spoke 3 words that would echo across the galaxy. Protocols released. Engage. Every human in the solar system heard those words. Admiral Junho on Earth, Commander Daejong on Mars, every defense station, every hidden platform, every autonomous system that had been waiting in the dark for over 5 decades. The solar defense network came alive. Prince Kethvan saw it happen on his sensors. One moment space was relatively empty. The next moment everything lit up. Thousands of contacts appeared on the tactical display. Tens of thousands, what is that? He shouted. Unknown contacts, sir. They're everywhere. In the asteroid belt around every planet, even in the Kuiper belt. How did we not see them before? They were dormant, sir. They just activated. The first wave hit before Kethvan could give another order. It wasn't energy weapons. It wasn't missiles. It was simpler than that and far more deadly. Tungsten rods, long metal poles accelerated to 90% of light speed by mass drivers hidden throughout the system. They had been fired the moment Hana gave the order, launched from concealed positions in the Kuiper belt. They had traveled across billions of kilometers in minutes, and now they arrived. The first rod hit the Draconis cruiser, Veshkarn. At that speed, mass was irrelevant. The shields were designed to stop energy and deflect projectiles. They did nothing. The rod punched through the ship like it was made of paper. It exited the other side and continued into space. The cruiser split in half, both pieces spinning away before exploding. 36 more rods found their targets in the next 7 seconds. 37 Draconis ships simply ceased to exist. Evasive action. Kethvan screamed. All ships, evasive patterns. Return fire. The fleet scattered, each ship breaking formation and trying to avoid the incoming death. But the rods kept coming. Not in waves. Constantly. The mass drivers never stopped firing. Then the second wave arrived. These weren't rods. These were small objects no bigger than a human fist. The Draconis point defense systems locked onto them and fired. Some were destroyed. Most weren't. The ones that survived closed the distance and detonated. They were antimatter bombs. Small, but at this range they didn't need to be large. Each explosion took out a Draconis ship or crippled it beyond repair. Sir, we're taking massive casualties. We need to retreat. Fire back, Kethvan ordered. Target that flagship. Every weapon on every remaining Draconis ship fired at once. Missiles, plasma beams, kinetic cannons, everything. The barrage was enormous, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human flagship didn't move. It didn't dodge. It didn't even raise shields. It didn't need to. The missiles detonated early, destroyed by point defense systems so accurate that not a single one got within a kilometer of the hull. The plasma beams hit what looked like empty space and dispersed, absorbed by some kind of field the Draconis sensors couldn't even detect. The kinetic rounds simply bounced off the armor. Impossible, Kethvan whispered. Then the Indomitable returned fire. Just one weapon. A single beam of coherent energy that made Draconis plasma look like a flashlight. It cut through 3 Draconis ships in a straight line, punching through shields and armor like they weren't there. Retreat, Kethvan finally screamed. All ships, full retreat. Get us out of here! The tactical officer looked up, his face pale. Sir, we can't. There's some kind of field around us. Jump drives won't engage. We're trapped. Kithvan felt real fear for the first time in his life. They were trapped in normal space with an enemy they couldn't hurt and couldn't escape. All around them, his fleet was dying. The Draconis fleet was burning. In 30 minutes of combat, they had lost half their ships. Prince Kithvan watched his tactical display with growing horror as ship after ship went dark. "How many do we have left?" he asked quietly. 147, sir, and most of those are damaged." Kithvan tried to understand what was happening. The Draconis were warriors. They had conquered species across dozens of systems. They had weapons that could level cities, ships that could blockade planets, and they were being destroyed by an enemy they couldn't even see most of the time. The human ships moved through space like ghosts. They ran cold. No heat signatures, no engine glow. The Draconis targeting systems couldn't lock onto them. By the time a ship was visible, it had already fired and moved away. "Sir, we're detecting more contacts. Different signatures this time." "Where?" "Mars orbit. They're heading this way." Kithvan pulled up the sensor data. 100 new ships were approaching. These ones were different from the flagship. Smaller, faster, and they weren't hiding anymore. They appeared on visual displays, and Kithvan felt his blood run cold. Each ship was small, barely the size of a Draconis fighter craft. But the power readings coming from them were impossible. Each one showed energy levels equivalent to a Draconis dreadnought. "How?" he whispered. "How can something that small generate that much power?" The science officer's voice shook as he replied, "Sir, I think they're using zero-point energy, extracting power directly from vacuum fluctuations. That's theoretical technology. It shouldn't be possible." Apparently, humans don't care what should be possible. The new human ships formed a perfect sphere around the remaining Draconis fleet. 100 ships positioned with mathematical precision, every angle covered. There was no escape route, no blind spot, no weakness. Commander Daejung led the Mars Strike Wing. He sat in his command chair aboard the destroyer Righteous Fury and studied the Draconis formation. They were panicking now. Good. Fear made enemies predictable. "All ships," he broadcast. "Free weapons release. Target the escorts first. Leave the flagship for last." The human ships opened fire as one. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Coordinated, precise, deadly. The Draconis shields held for approximately 3 seconds. Then they failed. Human weapons weren't like Krell weapons. They weren't like anything in the Galactic database. They used multiple attack vectors simultaneously. Kinetic penetrators to crack the shields, electromagnetic pulses to disable systems, and then plasma cutters to slice through the hull. Each human ship destroyed 3 Draconis vessels in the first minute. The Draconis tried to return fire, but their weapons couldn't track fast enough. The human ships moved in ways that defied physics as the Draconis understood it. They accelerated and turned without visible thrust, moving like they weren't bound by inertia. "They're using gravity manipulation," the science officer reported. "They're creating localized gravity fields to move. That's why they can turn so quickly." Kithvan barely heard him. He was watching his fleet die. His warriors. His ships. Everything he had brought with pride into this system was being systematically destroyed. In 1 hour, only 20 Draconis ships remained. In 90 minutes, only 5. In 2 hours, only 1. The flagship Veshikala sat alone in space, surrounded by debris. Surrounded by the bodies of Kithvan's warriors. The human ships held their fire, forming a sphere around the lone survivor. Captain Hana's voice came over the communication channel. "Prince Kithvan, your fleet is destroyed. Your warriors are dead. You have lost." Kithvan wanted to rage, to scream, to order his ship to fire everything and die in glory. But he couldn't. He had a duty to his queen, to his people. He had to survive to deliver the message. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you do this?" Hana's face appeared on his screen again. She looked tired now, sad. "Because you didn't listen. The council made the pact for a reason. We didn't want this. We never want this. But we won't be victims again. You killed 300 ships, thousands of warriors. You were warned 3 times, Hana replied coldly. The Krell were warned too. They didn't listen either. We gave them 17 years to learn. They learned how to be cruel. So we taught them something else. We taught them what happens when you push humanity too far." She paused, then continued. "Do you know what our doctrine is, Prince? It's very simple. When someone attacks us, we don't defeat them. We don't drive them back. We erase them. Completely. So thoroughly that everyone else thinks twice before trying again. That's monstrous. Maybe. But we're alive. And we're free. And no one will ever enslave us again. Hana's eyes hardened. You will return to your queen. You will show her the recordings of this battle. You will tell her what happened here. And you will deliver our message. What message? Your species has 48 hours to evacuate every ship, every station, every outpost within 3 sectors of human space. After that, anything Drekinus we detect will be destroyed without warning. You broke the pact, there are consequences. Kethvan felt shame burn through him. To retreat, to surrender. It went against everything he was. But he had no choice. The quantum disruption field will disengage in 10 minutes, Hana continued. You will jump directly to your home world. If you deviate from that course, if you attempt to transmit anything, if you do anything except go straight home, we will destroy you. Is that understood? Yes, Kethvan said quietly. One more thing, Hana added. Your queen should know this. We detected your fleet the moment you entered the Kuiper Belt. We could have destroyed you then. We gave you 3 warnings because we're not monsters. We don't want to kill, but we will, without hesitation, without mercy, without end. Make sure she understands that. The transmission ended. 10 minutes later, Kethvan felt the disruption field release. His jump drive came back online. He ordered the jump to Drek and watched as the human ship simply disappeared from his sensors, fading back into the dark of space. The Veshkala jumped away, leaving behind the debris field. 300 ships, thousands of bodies, all the pride of the Draconis hive, floating in the cold dark around Neptune. Admiral Junho watched the Draconis flagship disappear from his sensors. He opened a channel to all human forces. Stand down from combat alert. Return to standard patrol. Good work, everyone. Captain Hana sat in her command chair and felt exhausted. She had killed thousands today. Enemy warriors, yes. Invaders who had been warned. But still, thousands of living beings were dead because they didn't believe humanity was dangerous. Her great-grandmother, Minji, had written in her journal about the first time she killed a Krell. She had been sick for days afterward. But she had kept fighting. Because the alternative was slavery or death. Hana understood that now. Being free meant being willing to fight. Being strong meant being willing to kill. It was a terrible burden, but it was better than the alternative. Commander Daejung's face appeared on her screen. Captain, the debris field is secure. Do you want us to recover anything? No, Hana said. Leave it. Leave all of it. The next species that breaks the pact needs to see what happens. She closed the channel and looked out at space. Somewhere out there, the Draconis prince was heading home to tell his queen about humanity, about what happened when you ignored the warnings, about the price of ignorance. And somewhere else, the galaxy was about to learn the lesson all over again. Humanity was to be left alone. The Veshkala emerged from jump space above Drek. Prince Kethvan sat in his command chair staring at nothing. His crew was silent. What could they say? They had left with 300 ships and returned with 1. Queen Veshkara was waiting in the throne room when Kethvan arrived. She took one look at her son and knew something terrible had happened. He was a warrior. She had trained him herself. She had never seen fear in his eyes before. Report, she commanded. Kethvan presented the black box recordings. Every moment of the battle. Every warning. Every death. The queen watched in silence as her fleet was systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. When it was over, she said nothing for a long time. Finally, she asked, how many survived? Just us, the flagship. Everyone else is dead. 300 ships, 15,000 warriors. Dead in 2 hours. Yes, my queen. Veshkara looked at the frozen image on the display. It showed a human ship, small and dark, firing a weapon that cut through 3 Draconis vessels. I was wrong, she said quietly. The council wasn't afraid of primitives. They were afraid of this. What do? We obey. We pull back every ship, every station, every outpost within 3 sectors of their space, and we never ever go near humanity again. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Every species was present. The chamber was packed. Everyone had heard rumors. The Draconis, the aggressive newcomers who feared nothing, had attacked the Forbidden Zone. And they had been destroyed. Councillor Taeyang called the session to order. We are here to address the Draconis violation of Resolution 3445 and the subsequent military engagement. Queen Veshikara entered the chamber. She had never attended in person before, always sending representatives. But today was different. Today she needed to face this herself. I, Queen Veshikara of the Dracanis Hive, formally apologized to this council. We were warned. We did not listen. We paid the price. The chamber erupted in whispers. A Dracanis apologizing? It was unheard of. Veshikara continued. We will play the combat recordings for this council. Everyone needs to see what we saw. Everyone needs to understand. The lights dimmed. The recordings played on the main display. Every council member watched as the Dracanis fleet was destroyed. They saw the warnings. They saw the human weapons. They saw the cold, calculated efficiency of humanity's military power. When it was over, the chamber was silent. We have withdrawn all our assets from the border regions, Veshikara said. We formally renounce any claim to space within 50 light-years of Sol, and we request that the Council update all records to make the danger of humanity clear. Future species should not make our mistake. Councillor Taeyang nodded slowly. Your request is noted. Now we have a transmission from Earth. The holographic display shifted. Ambassador Yuna appeared, much older now than she had been 53 years ago. Next to her stood a younger human woman in a similar uniform. Councillor Taeyang, Yuna said. It's been a long time, Ambassador Yuna. It's good to see you, though I wish the circumstances were different. As do I. Yuna gestured to the younger woman. This is Ambassador Nari. She will be taking over my position. I'm too old for this now. Nari stepped forward. She looked like Yuna had looked decades ago. Strong, determined, unafraid. Councillor Taeyang, honored members of the Galactic Council, I am here to reaffirm what my predecessor told you 53 years ago. Humanity wants peace, but we will defend ourselves with every weapon we possess. She paused, looking directly at the camera. The Dracanis were warned 3 times. We gave them every chance to leave. They chose not to. What happened was not our desire, but it was necessary. We will not apologize for surviving. Ambassador Yuna spoke again, her voice still strong despite her age. When the Krell came to Earth, we were naive. We thought the galaxy would be full of friends and explorers. Instead, we found masters and slaves. We were enslaved for 17 years. In that time, they taught us how your galaxy works. They taught us that only strength matters. They taught us that mercy is weakness. She leaned forward slightly. So we learned. We became strong. We showed no mercy, and we survived. The Pact was created because the Council understood what we had become, what we had to become. The Dracanis forgot that lesson. Or maybe they never learned it. Nari spoke again. We know our reputation. We know you fear us. We know you tell stories about us to scare your children. Good. Fear keeps you away. Distance keeps us all alive. Councillor Taeyang cleared his throat. Ambassador Nari, the Council would like to propose a new agreement. A second pact, if you will. We want to formalize humanity's borders and establish protocols for trade and communication that don't require direct contact. What are you proposing? 50 light-years from Sol in all directions becomes formally recognized as sovereign human territory. No Council species may enter without express permission. In exchange, humanity will establish neutral trade stations at the border where goods and information can be exchanged. Nari looked at Yuna. The older woman nodded slightly. We accept, Nari said, with one addition. Any violation of this territory, deliberate or accidental, will be treated as an act of war. No warnings, no chances. Immediate response, the council members shifted uncomfortably. But Taeyang nodded. That seems fair given what happened. Let's vote. All in favor of the second pact with humanity's amendment? 17 green lights appeared. Only the Dracanis abstained, having lost their voting privileges. The second pact is established, Taeyang announced. May it last longer than we all live. Nari's image smiled slightly. It wasn't a warm smile. Counselor, we hope we never see each other again. Nothing personal. We just prefer our solitude. I understand completely, Ambassador. The transmission ended. The council members began filing out, talking quietly among themselves. The younger species were shaken. They had seen the combat recordings. They understood now. Councillor Taeyang remained seated as the chamber emptied. He was old now, like Yuna. He had spent his entire life on the council. He had seen many things. But humanity still frightened him, not because they were cruel. The Krell had been cruel. The Dracanis were cruel. No, humanity frightened him because they were effective. When they fought, they didn't posture or challenge. They simply destroyed their enemy completely, efficiently, without emotion. 50 years later, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace. Humanity's trade stations operated at the border, run by automated systems. Humans rarely left their territory. When they did, they traveled alone and didn't stay long. The galactic economy adjusted. Human technology flowed outward through the trade stations, medical advances, defensive systems, power generation. The humans sold these things for raw materials and information. They never sold weapons, never shared military technology. But what they did share was enough to make them wealthy. Young species joining the council were taught about humanity in their first orientation session. The recordings of the Neptune massacre were required viewing. The lesson was simple: leave humanity alone. On Earth, Captain Hana had retired. She was old now, living quietly in the countryside. Sometimes young officers came to interview her, to ask what it had been like. She always told them the same thing. We didn't want to be warriors. We wanted to explore, to learn, to make friends. But the galaxy had other plans, so we adapted. We became what we needed to be to survive. In the Museum of Liberation on Earth, new displays had been added. Captain Hana's uniform hung next to her great-grandmother Minji's combat armor. The plaque beneath read, "We did not choose to be warriors. We chose to be free." Ambassador Nari, now middle-aged, still served as Earth's voice to the Council. She had never met the Council in person. All communication was done through holograms and automated systems. She was fine with that. One day, a young counselor from a newly joined species asked her, "Do you think humanity will ever rejoin the galactic community? Travel among us? Live on our worlds?" Nari thought about it for a long time before answering. "Maybe, someday, when we're sure we won't have to fight. When we're sure we can trust you. But that day isn't here yet. Maybe it never will be, and we're okay with that." The galaxy moved on. Trade continued. Borders were respected, and humanity remained in their 50 light-year sphere, watching the stars, ready to defend themselves, hoping they would never have to. The second pact held. Not because of trust, not because of friendship, but because everyone remembered what happened when you forgot that humanity, for all their talk of peace, were the most dangerous species in the known galaxy, and they were perfectly happy to be left alone.